This is the story of a prince who became obsessed with a cute little kitten. What he didn't know was that this adorable kitten could transform into a fierce, wild beast, and its favorite dessert was peaches with cream. The prince's name was Kalen Ashford, the fourth son of the seasonal empire, ruler of the coastal region. He visited the Colosseum quite often to watch a leopard man fight. Kalen was deeply worried that day. He noticed that someone had hurt his little kitten. The poor thing had metal spikes embedded in the back of its neck, which must have been incredibly painful. But a man explained to him that this kitten was actually a ferocious beast. The collar and spikes were meant to prevent it from transforming into its true form, a panther. It was a Beastman with the power to fully transform, and the collar suppressed that ability. The man then asked if Kalen wanted to place a bet. But Kalen noticed that things were getting out of control in the arena. The kitten had already killed all its opponents. The crowd called it a monster, but the kitten asked, if it was a monster, then what were humans? They had torn out its claws. Imagine having your nails ripped off. They had driven steel spikes into its spine and forced it to fight day and night, making its life worse than death. Then they released a lion to face it. The humans had clearly given the animals substances to alter their instincts. The kitten calmly told the lion not to be afraid, that it would all be over soon. The crowd cheered wildly as the kitten stood beside the lion's corpse. It was explained that all the animals in the Colosseum were tortured to death without exception. A quick death was considered a luxury. But to humans, this was nothing more than entertainment. At that moment, the kitten noticed its chains had loosened. It broke free and began attacking the spectators. In the chaos, Kalen fell. The kitten approached him, plombed on top of him, and demanded something, growling aggressively. Kalen tried to calm it down, promising to help. But the kitten was completely out of control. Just as it was about to strike, it was suddenly yanked back by chains and brutally whipped. Kalen shouted for them to stop. I want to buy the beast. The man warned him that it was dangerous. A noble once tried to buy it before, but that very same night, the beast killed a servant. Kalen didn't care. He muttered that he only wanted it for revenge. Later that night, Kalen had the kitten tied to a chair. He introduced himself and declared that he was now its master, and that he would treat it well. The kitten asked if he planned to torture it for attacking him earlier. But Kalen said he knew the beast hadn't truly wanted to hurt him. It was just defending itself. He asked about the injuries on its eyes, but the kitten responded that those wounds weren't inflicted by humans, but by its former companions. The kitten challenged him. If he was truly different, then he should remove the chains. Kalen hesitated. The kitten scoffed, saying he was no different from the others. But Kalen admitted he was afraid of pain. Still, if the kitten promised not to bite him, he'd set it free. The kitten pretended to agree. As soon as it was released, it immediately started strangling Kalen, calling him a fool. Kalen reminded it of its promise, but the kitten replied that it never said anything about not choking him. Even so, Kalen calmly tended to a wound on the beast's arm. This confused the kitten. It wasn't expecting kindness. Suddenly, Colosseum workers burst in, claiming they arrived just in time before the beast killed again. With no choice, the kitten grabbed Kalen as a hostage. Kalen insisted the beast wasn't doing anything wrong, but the workers ignored him and moved to capture it. Kalen stepped in front of them, detecting the kitten, and demanded to know how they dared enter his property. The kitten, however, didn't trust him. It threw Kalen aside and launched an attack, but was quickly cut. The blade seemed to be coated with poison or a sedative. One of the workers declared that Kalen would be killed by the very beast he bought. It was revealed that the Colosseum workers intentionally released beasts into buyers' homes, provoked them into killing, then recaptured and resold them, creating an endless cycle of profit. The man claimed no one cared about what happened to a beast like that. But Kalen said he did. This caught the kitten's attention. As Kalen continued defending it, the beast suddenly unleashed its power, killed the man, and collapsed unconscious afterward. At that moment, Kalen's guards arrived and reported that the other intruders had been eliminated. They asked whether to kill the remaining ones, but it turned out they were soldiers of the Crown Prince, Kalen's older brother, so they couldn't be executed. Kalen revealed that his older brother was involved in shady dealings. He decided to imprison and interrogate the soldiers himself. We then saw Kalen's past. He was constantly bullied by his older brother, who treated him as useless. Even the king looked down on him, comparing him to his weak mother and mocking his ambition for the throne. Back in the present, Kalen vowed that one day he would claim the throne and prove them all wrong. It was revealed that Beastmen were extremely rare. Each one had the strength of 1,000 men. Kalen realized that if he could control them, gaining the throne would be easy. He ordered someone to bathe the kitten and take it to bed, thinking to himself how adorable it was. When it became savage, the more violent it was, the more satisfying it would be to tame, and the more valuable it became. He concluded that no one was allowed to harm or touch his pet. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the captured soldiers threatened Kalen's guard, saying the Crown Prince would be furious if they weren't released. But Kalen appeared and mocked them. He said his brother was good at training oil dogs, which explained his involvement with the Colosseum. He offered one soldier a chance to live if he told the truth. When the soldier refused, Kalen killed him without hesitation. Then, with an innocent smile, he asked the other soldier the same question. Terrified, the second soldier confessed everything. The Crown Prince had been selling beasts to raise funds while searching for people capable of taming them, likely to build an army and seize the throne. Kalen asked why the beasts were always recaptured before they could be domesticated. The soldier explained that while the prince ordered their distribution, the Colosseum owner didn't want to lose profit, so he kept the cycle going, selling, retrieving, and reselling the beasts endlessly. The soldier begged for his freedom. Kalen smiled and told him he'd be released, and then killed him anyway. As he reflected on everything, Kalen realized that while his brother didn't mind stealing openly, he drew the line at fraud. However, his subordinates were doing shady things behind his back, and if that ever came to light, it could seriously embarrass him. Once his brother lost control, he'd make many mistakes. Because of that, Kalen started coming up with a plan and told his subordinate to gather the people. Switching scenes, Kalen was with his little kitten, thinking about how it had saved his life and wondering whether he was just stupid or simply an idiot. He chained it up again while continuing to reflect, saying he wanted to mark the little panther with his own imprint and wondering what the best way to do that would be. Just then, the kitten woke up, and they ended up face to face. But the moment was ruined when the kitten realized it was chained. Kalen asked if it felt uncomfortable. The kitten replied that he had tied it up. But Kalen said it was misunderstanding. Supposedly, he saw it moving wildly in its sleep and was worried it might hurt itself. The kitten told him off, but then felt something wet on its arm and looked over. It was Kalen, crying like a mess while apologizing. He said he promised to protect it but failed, and that it even got hurt. He called himself useless. The little panther, maybe a Thurian, not an idiot, didn't believe a word of those crocodile tears. So Kalen changed tactics and said that if it didn't believe him, he'd set it free and wouldn't put chains on it again without its permission. The panther looked at him and thought Kalen had let his guard down, deciding it would wait until it was unchained and then escape. But it was surprised when Kalen said he had already called the doctor while it was asleep to remove the nails, so it would soon be completely free. That move shook the panther, but its hatred for humans was still strong, so it didn't fully trust Kalen. It thought it was just an act and refused to be fooled. Kalen finished removing the chains, and the panther asked if he wasn't afraid that once the nails were gone, it would fully transform into a beast and attack him. Kalen said no, adding that if it had truly wanted to kill him, it would have done so already. He also said he'd never touched a kitten before and that when it transformed, its fur would probably be soft like a pillow. The panther thought Kalen was an idiot. It wondered if he really believed he could contain someone like him. Still, the idea was tempting, and it considered taking the risk, referring to having the nails removed from its spine. It asked what the doctor would do. Kalen explained that since the nails were embedded in the spine, they could only be removed by cutting into the skin, making it a long and painful process. Anesthesia could be used, but it would temporarily dull perception. Of course, it would only be used with its consent. The panther said it had been through far worse, so a little pain wouldn't matter. But there was no way it was letting anyone inject strange substances into its body, especially if it left it incapacitated. It stood up and asked where the doctor was. Kalen was surprised it wanted the operation now, given how injured it was. The panther replied that it was its body and its decision, and besides, didn't the blonde want to pet it as soon as possible? Kalen agreed and went to fetch the doctor. The scene shifted again, and the operation was about to begin. The doctor warned Kalen that it would be bloody and asked if he'd rather wait outside. But the prince insisted on staying by the kitten's side. The surgery began, one cut here, another there. The pain made the panther suffer. Of course, like any typical protagonist, it was deeply scarred and unstable. Kalen told the kitten that if it hurt that much, it could bite him. The kitten warned that if it bit, it would tear a chunk out of his arm. But that only excited Kalen more. The panther noticed his expression and decided not to bite. It said it had endured much worse and wouldn't lose its mind over something like this. The doctor removed one nail. The panther added that this pain was nothing compared to what it endured in the Colosseum. All the suffering humans had caused it. It vowed to survive so it could avenge the beasts who had died for human entertainment. But Kalen, clearly unhinged, suddenly shoved his own arm into the panther's mouth. The panther was stunned. Kalen told it he was perfect. The doctor removed the final nail and said the kitten had fainted from the pain, but its physical condition was remarkable, so it would recover quickly. He asked Kalen why he let himself be bitten. Kalen replied that he had his reasons and told him to continue with the plan they'd agreed on. Keep the kitten stable while he went to treat his wounds. Here, Kalen's true intentions were revealed. He had wanted to use anesthesia to mark the kitten, but failed. Watching it suffer had almost brought out his desire to torture it. So he forced the kitten to bite him to use the physical pain to control his twisted impulses. He hadn't expected the panther to be the first to leave a mark on him. Suddenly, a subordinate arrived and asked what happened. Kalen casually said his naughty kitten bit him. The man was worried because Kalen was in his house and had even killed his men. Technically, this territory belonged to the crown prince, Kalen's older brother, so if he found out, Kalen could be executed. But Kalen told him to relax, saying he'd leave soon anyway. He had also spread information about what was happening in the Colosseum, so his brother would likely want to bury the scandal quickly, meaning it wouldn't affect the lord of the house. After that, Kalen went to treat his wound. While being treated, he noted how deep it was and admitted that if the kitten hadn't held back, he would have lost his entire arm. He even regretted not treating the wound in front of him, so the kitten would feel guilty for hurting him. Suddenly, someone shouted that the panther was trying to escape. Kalen rushed over. They had pinned the Therian to the ground. Seeing it so wild and untamed disgusted him, and he started thinking he might need to treat it like a wild animal, lock it up, put a collar on it, mark it, and feed it by hand. But he snapped back to reality when he heard the kitten cursing at the man. He approached, pretending to be concerned, and ordered them to step away. Kneeling beside the panther, he asked how it was doing and said it should be resting since it had just undergone surgery. The doctor said that if it didn't recover properly, it could die. If it wouldn't rest for itself, it should at least do it for him, for Kalen. But no one believed his act. Surprisingly, the kitten started to waver. wondering why everything felt different when Kalen was around. Then a headache hit it, and it snapped back, questioning how it could almost be fooled. It told Kalen to stop pretending, saying it knew he was plotting something. The only reason it was still alive was for revenge against humans, and when that day came, the first person it would kill would be that blonde. Moments later, the doctor calmed the little panther down, saying it was a good thing the prince had arrived to help. Otherwise, it might have died. The Thurian was still in a feral state and snapped at him to take his filthy hands off it. It wasn't a pet to be handled like that. Suddenly, the doctor cleared his throat and said he wanted to speak with the prince alone. He took him outside and spoke bluntly. Why had he taken in a wild panther that would be so difficult to tame? Even if he removed the chains, it would still be a wild creature. Kalen replied that he didn't care in the slightest. The doctor told him not to be foolish and to think with his head, not his impulses. He added that Kalen had already earned the hostility of the crown prince because of that kitten. He advised that the best option would be to let the panther go, especially after it had injured him. But Kalen played innocent and said he only wanted to help the helpless. If the panther returned to the wild in its current condition, it would be torn apart. He said that once it recovered, he would consider letting it go, but for now, he wouldn't tolerate such suggestions or any disrespect. Of course, he said all of this loud enough for the foolish kitten to hear. And it did. The Thurian started thinking. Its people, the Thurians, was still suffering at the hands of humans. What am I supposed to do? It wondered. That night, the kitten had nightmares. It dreamed of its people being attacked. Everything was on fire. The inhabitants were being slaughtered in the most brutal ways. The panther appeared in its transformed state, which was surprising, considering it had been said that a Beastman was worth 1,000 soldiers. Perhaps the humans had chained them and forced them to turn on each other, even injecting them with substances that drove them mad. Another Thurian, crying, said it didn't want to become a monster who killed its own kind and begged to be put out of its misery. The panther blamed itself for everything that had happened. Suddenly, someone called out to it. The kitten woke up, and there was Kalen. The panther asked what he was doing there. Kalen gently wiped the sweat from its forehead and said he heard it shouting, so he rushed over, worried something had happened. The kitten replied that it was fine and told him to go back to his room, but Kalen said it didn't look okay. The kitten lashed out, telling him to stop pitying it and to leave. But what it didn't realize was that Kalen actually liked being treated that way, so he stayed and hugged it tightly, saying the reason it was acting like that was because it had a terrible dream. He added that he also woke up from nightmares sometimes, and in those moments, he just wanted someone beside him, someone to hold him. That whisper made the panther blush, and it angrily pushed him away again. In the process, Kalen's shirt came open, and he quickly covered himself, acting startled. Then he asked why the panther resisted him so much. The panther, slightly embarrassed, said it didn't mean it. But Kalen suddenly snapped, shouting, did it think he was like those despicable people who only wanted to use it as an outlet for their anger? He said he had tried hard to change the kitten's opinion of him, but no matter what he did, he couldn't force it to accept him. Even so, the kitten began to waver, slowly falling for the blonde's words. Kalen laughed, pretending to be deeply offended, saying that in the coming days they would travel to his territory, so they should prepare for the journey. The kitten tried to stop him, but Kalen had already gone. Several days later, they set off toward Kalen's territory. The kitten noticed that since that day, Kalen hadn't spoken to it again. I should hate humans, it thought. So why do I feel so guilty about what I said to him? Maybe Kalen was right. It shouldn't have taken out its anger on him. Still, it worried that if it stayed with him, it would eventually forget its hatred for humans. Even if it was unfair to Kalen, What happened to its tribe mattered more. So it decided to transform and escape. Meanwhile, Kalen was stroking his pet bird, saying it was time for it to do its job, and sent it to capture the wild Therian. The panther tried to use the stars to find its way home, but just then, the bird appeared and landed on its feet, forcing it to return to its human form. Kalen's plan was to pretend the bird had escaped. He chased after it frantically and begged the kitten to give it back without hurting it. The panther looked at him, wondering why he seemed more worried about the bird than when his own life had been in danger. Did he think that bird's life was more valuable than its own? The kitten said it had no intention of harming it, and returned it. Kalen happily hugged the bird, saying he had cared for it for a long time and loved it dearly. He also apologized for thinking the kitten might hurt it. The kitten then asked how he ended up alone in the forest. With an innocent expression, Kalen said that as soon as he saw the bird fly off, he followed it without telling anyone, and his gods probably didn't even notice. He added that if the bird had just stayed quietly in its cage, he wouldn't have had to go through all that trouble, clearly hinting that if the kitten had stayed put instead of trying to escape, he wouldn't have needed to chase it. Kalen then asked if it had been trying to run away. The panther lied and said it was just taking a walk, thinking it was better not to tell the truth, or Kalen might start crying again. Kalen moved closer and asked if they could go back together, since it was night and he was scared. The kitten agreed, thinking that it wouldn't be able to escape that day after all. A little later, they sat together by a campfire. Kalen said that during those days, he had resisted the urge to visit the kitten but asked the doctor every day about its condition. He added that its wounds were already healing. The kitten confirmed it was true. Kalen teasingly called it cold and distant. The kitten replied, "That's just how I am," while thinking it wouldn't be fooled. It would return to its tribe no matter what. Meanwhile, Kalen cursed inwardly. Neither kindness nor guilt was enough to stop the kitten from trying to escape. So he decided he would have to take more extreme measures. He took the bird's wing and said that after spending so long in a cage, it suddenly flew away and got hurt. He reassured the kitten not to worry. He would take very good care of it. The kitten looked at him and wondered if Kalen had treated him with the same tenderness back then. Blinded by hatred, it had treated Kalen like every other disgusting human, something that must have hurt him deeply. Now he was probably very angry with it. But the foolish kitten felt terrible and asked Kalen, if someone took out their anger on you because of others, would you get mad, or just ignore it? The sly fox Kalen said he wasn't angry at the kitten. The kitten blushed and quickly said it wasn't talking about him, but about a friend of a friend who went through something like that. Plain, innocent Kalen replied that he understood. He added that he used to spend a lot of time with animals, so he thought that if he treated them well, they would naturally come closer. But he forgot that people were far more complicated than animals. He apologized for making things difficult. The kitten looked visibly guilty, thinking, "Why the hell do I feel so bad?" Kalen placed the bird back in its cage and started yawning. Then, pretending to be tired, he leaned against the panther's arm and fell asleep. The panther watched him and thought it made sense. He must be exhausted after spending the whole day taking care of that bird. It was only natural for someone so delicate to get tired, though realistically, Kalen had barely done anything but hold it. The kitten also wondered what Kalen meant about liking animals. Did he actually like them, or did he just prefer them over people? All of this ran through its mind while its tail swayed uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Kalen wasn't asleep at all. He was fully aware, enjoying the warmth and strength of the panther's arm. Its tail was so soft, its body so solid it even made Kalen's heart race. He noticed the kitten's heartbeat speeding up and its tail heating up and immediately realized what it meant. Yes, the kitten was reacting. Kalen pressed closer, rubbing against it like a cat in heat, flustering it even more. He had already noticed that when he petted the kitten, it became visibly happier. That made things much easier. Now he'd change his strategy. He'd seduce it, make it fall in love so it would never betray him. Several days later, they were traveling together in a carriage. The kitten narrated that Kalen hadn't stopped clinging to it the entire time. Every time it tried to escape, that sly fox would appear and start crying. At one point, the horses suddenly panicked, and Kalen used the opportunity to throw himself onto the kitten. There was definitely some questionable contact there, making the panther turn bright red as it pushed him away, completely flustered, trying to regain composure. The kitten nervously wondered what had just happened, while Kalen casually asked his knight what was going on. The knight explained that someone had blocked the carriage, and they were dealing with it. A man was shouting, demanding to see the ruler of the land. He seemed desperate, but the guards were holding him back. So Kalen stepped down from the carriage, acting kind, and ordered them to let the man speak. The man begged to see the ruler even just once. Kalen refused, but offered to pass along his message instead. The man explained that he worked at the port and recently had his wages taken from him. Not only that, but his home had been raided, and everything was stolen. Kalen calmly reassured him, saying he understood and that he would report the situation. Once the ruler heard about it, he wouldn't ignore it. He told the man to leave quietly so the wrong people wouldn't notice, and promised to find a way to contact him later. The panther then asked why he even wanted to help. Kalen replied that he would never tolerate injustice, that the people deserved a wise and fair ruler, and becoming such a ruler was his goal. The panther was left speechless, though it was clear Kalen was still putting on an act. It then asked why Kalen hid his true identity. After all, he was the ruler of these lands. Kalen answered that if he revealed who he really was, people might not speak honestly to him. The kitten realized just how cunning he was. Soon after, Kalen showed it his castle and asked if it would stay with him until the end. Later that night, the kitten reflected that ever since they arrived, Kalen had been working non-stop. Despite his small frame, his ambition was enormous. Comparing itself to him, the kitten concluded that it had been. We then saw a memory from the kitten's past. It was being whipped by another of its kind, apparently for being rebellious and wanting revenge on humans. The older figure asked if it still didn't understand why revenge was forbidden. The kitten argued that humans had killed many of their people. Why shouldn't they take revenge? The elder embraced it and explained, if they killed humans today, humans would kill them tomorrow. Revenge only created an endless cycle. He told it not to let itself be consumed by hatred. Back in the present, the kitten began to reconsider. Maybe its goal it shouldn't be revenge after all. Maybe it should focus on finding a way to save its people instead. Meanwhile, Kalen reflected that what he witnessed wasn't just about the oppression of Beastmen. It was also tied to slave trafficking. Either way, he needed to see everything with his own eyes. He noticed the kitten watching him from afar. So once again, he pretended to be weak, knocking things over and acting unwell. This immediately alerted the kitten, who jumped from a tree straight to the window to check on him. It asked if he was okay. Kalen apologized for worrying it and said he just needed some rest. Then he asked to be taken back to his room. The panther lifted him into its arms and carried him back to bed. As it was about to leave, Kalen grabbed its clothes and said he couldn't sleep. The kitten replied that it wasn't a pet. Kalen reminded it that it had promised that once the nails were removed, he'd let him touch its fur. He said he had been waiting for a long time, and the kitten had never really let him touch it properly. The kitten held its head in frustration, while Kalen insisted that promises had to be kept. In the end, the kitten gave in and allowed him to touch only its ears and tail. But Kalen immediately took advantage, climbing on top of it. He murmured that its ears were very sensitive, while the kitten wondered why he was touching it so roughly. Kalen then asked if its tail was just as sensitive. The kitten thought that maybe Kalen was getting back at it for not letting him touch him before. Meanwhile, Kalen, clearly enjoying it, commented on how soft and flexible its body was. That stirred the kitten's wild side, and in a quick move, it flipped Kalen and pinned him underneath. But instead of being intimidated, that only made Kalen even more excited. He asked it to be gentler, saying that if it was too rough, his whole body would hurt. Still somewhat in control, the kitten pulled away and said it had already allowed enough, so it was leaving. Even so, it couldn't help thinking that it almost lost its composure just because of those hands touching its tail. But Kalen grabbed its arm and told it he wasn't going anywhere, saying the kitten needed to take care of itself. The kitten turned bright red but still walked away, saying that was none of Kalen's business, and it could handle it on its own. As it left, Kalen thought to himself that he truly wanted that wild side of the kitten, and that he would do whatever it took to obtain it. The next day, the kitten asked why Kalen was dressed like that, and where he was taking him. Kalen replied that they were going on a date. A date? The kitten asked, confused. Kalen explained that he might have given it the wrong impression before, so now he wanted to spend time together to get to know each other better and also show it his territory. Then, teasingly, he asked if it even knew what a date was, but didn't give it time to answer. Instead, he grabbed it and told it to hurry since they had important things to do. The kitten thought to itself that it hoped Kalen wasn't planning to take it somewhere secluded and get hands-on again, though it admitted it felt strange, like its resistance was weakening. They arrived at the port. This was where the man who had asked Kalen for help worked, the one whose wages and belongings had been taken. Kalen intended to infiltrate the place to uncover the truth. The kitten asked if this was the important thing they had to do. Kalen said yes, then asked if it had been expecting something else. The kitten brushed it off, saying it hadn't been thinking about anything. Soon after, a man approached them and grabbed them, asking if they no longer wanted to receive their wages. But the moment he saw Kalen's face, he froze and immediately changed his tone, saying that resting when tired was fine, but there were limits. The kitten was about to step in and defend Kalen, but Kalen signaled it to trust him. Then, putting on an act, he said that perhaps his father had offended the man, which was why his wages had been withheld, so he had come to apologize on his behalf and asked for forgiveness and for the wages to be returned. The man, who clearly had questionable intentions, replied that he had indeed been offended, so things wouldn't be settled so easily. Kalen said he was willing to do anything in exchange for his forgiveness, anything the man asked. The kitten burned with anger, sensing where this was going. The man told Kalen it would be better to discuss things in private. The kitten told him not to go, but Kalen reassured it, telling it to trust him and wait there. The man glanced suspiciously at the kitten. One was a delicate blonde with green eyes, the other a strong figure with cat ears and a tail. But Kalen explained that they were both orphans adopted by the same father. He added that the kitten had always looked after him, which was why he was uneasy about letting his younger brother go with another man. Moments later, the man led Kalen to a set of small houses, mentioning that there were guards everywhere so the kitten wouldn't be able to interfere. He also ordered the guards not to interrupt them unless something serious happened. Kalen asked if things regarding his father could truly be resolved. The man, undressing, said yes. His uncle, Baron Wester, had given him full authority over the port, so he was the one who made the decisions. Now Kalen, acting vulnerable, asked if the man wasn't afraid that the ruler would find out about what he was doing with the workers' wages. The man burst out laughing, saying the ruler was an incompetent fool. He added that all the princes were unstable and that his uncle had ties with the third prince. Once he took the throne, they would crush the current ruler. As the man grabbed Kalen's face, it was clear what he intended to do. But Kalen, being a prince himself and just as unhinged, suddenly stabbed him through the hand. He revealed that he too was a prince and the ruler of those lands. It was already too late. Even as the man begged for mercy, Kalen said he had been pretending to be gentle for a long time in order to seduce the kitten. Now his twisted side took over, and he brutally killed the man. Even after that, he felt unsatisfied, saying that no matter how much pain he inflicted, the desire for blood never disappeared. Suddenly, one of his guards appeared, saying they couldn't stop the kitten. It was already on its way. The kitten arrived and saw the scene. The man lying lifeless on the ground, and Kaylin holding a knife, acting shaken and telling it not to come closer. The kitten instead rushed forward and hugged him, saying it was too late. But Kaylin, too deep into his act, lashed out and slashed the kitten's back. The kitten, still emotional, said it was fine, just a scratch. Meanwhile, Kaylin felt a disturbing thrill, realizing that hurting it stirred something inside him, making his twisted desires grow stronger. He took the kitten's hand and apologized, saying he didn't mean to do that, and asked to treat the wound. But when he saw it, he became strangely fascinated, calling it beautiful and even going as far as to lick it. The kitten, flustered, pushed him away and told him not to do that. It was dirty. Kaylin immediately twisted those words, saying he was right. He came from dirty origins. He then went on to reveal his past. His mother had been forced into a relationship with the emperor, who saw him as a disgrace and despised him. His father and brothers mistreated him for being the son of a commoner, forcing him to become submissive just to survive. Despite that, he was still cast aside. Over time, he began to harm himself and developed a warped mindset, finding control and power through pain. He came to believe that power could be gained through dominance, control, and even destruction. Crying, he said that no one would ever love him. This affected the kitten, who tried to comfort him, saying it hadn't meant to call him dirty. But Kaylin kept crying, leaving the kitten unsure of what to do. Eventually, the kitten transformed and tried to comfort him in its own way, hoping that by surrounding him with its scent, it would calm him down. Meanwhile, Kaylin thought to himself that this wild creature would soon be tamed. He just had to be more persistent. Later back at his residence, Kaylin bathed while the kitten filled the tub. He asked the kitten to wash him, but the kitten refused. So Kaylin played the victim again, suggesting that the kitten found him disgusting. Left with no choice, the kitten reluctantly helped. Kaylin told it to be gentler, teasing it until the situation became awkward. At one point, he guided the kitten's hand inappropriately, making it pull away in embarrassment. Kaylin then dragged it into the tub, asking if it wanted to bathe together. The kitten resisted, but Kaylin silenced it with a touch, teasing it further. At one point, he pulled it underwater and then kissed it to help it breathe, which left the kitten stoned. After surfacing, Kaylin asked if it felt better and even suggested continuing. The kitten, overwhelmed, reacted instinctively and bit him hard enough to draw blood. Kaylin, instead of reacting normally, seemed pleased. He escalated things, trying to assert control and provoke a reaction, but the kitten ultimately recoiled and fled, embarrassed and confused. Left alone, Kaylin wondered why he had been rejected, whether he wasn't attractive enough or if he had been too desperate. Shortly after, he ordered one of his soldiers to behead the man from the port and send the head to Baron Wester's castle. Kaylin also ordered that all accomplices be executed. He told his subordinate to take advantage of the situation to investigate everyone and eliminate any rats within his territory. Kaylin thought that his third brother had unintentionally done him a favor, and since he dared to meddle in his lands, he would have to send him a nice gift in return. Switching scenes, the kitten began enjoying a more comfortable life while watching the blonde work efficiently. Still, it couldn't stop remembering how Kaylin had kissed it so deeply, and it would blush at the thought. Even in its dreams, it found itself imagining intimate moments with him. It realized that Kaylin had become someone difficult to ignore and wondered whether that was a good or bad thing. Suddenly, someone arrived asking to see Kaylin. It was the worker who had previously asked for help. Kalen ordered that he be let in. The man fell to his knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. The workers brought offerings and thanked him, explaining that they had recovered their wages and belongings. Only then did the man realize that Kalen was actually the governor. The kitten watched all this and began to understand that not all humans were the same. These people were different from the ones who had attacked its village, and from the image it had in its mind. Even Kalen, despite everything, didn't fully fit into that hatred anymore. Still, the kitten told itself it was impossible for it to fall for a human, especially a man. And yet, it couldn't stop looking at him. Kalen, on the other hand, thought that it was only a matter of time before the kitten fell into his hands. From then on, Kalen kept getting closer to it in small but constant ways. When the kitten handed him documents, Kalen would deliberately brush against its hand. While eating dessert, he would tease it playfully. During training, he would approach it to wipe its sweat. Even when reaching for things, he would get unnecessarily close. All of this began to affect the kitten more than it wanted to admit. It started struggling with its own thoughts and reactions, realizing that its feelings and instincts were becoming harder to control and more tied to Kalen. Unbeknownst to it, Kalen had already noticed. Watching from the shadows, he thought that the kitten had finally fallen into his trap. He believed that the kitten's growing attachment meant he needed to discipline it and remind it of its place. Later, on a balcony overlooking the sea, Kalen was reading a letter with a faint smile. The kitten asked what he was reading that made him smile like that. Kalen casually replied that it was a letter from someone he liked. The kitten immediately felt a pang of jealousy and asked if he really had someone in his heart. Kalen said yes, that he had gone through many things with that person and their bond had grown strong. He even hinted that they had made promises about the future. That was the breaking point. The kitten suddenly slammed him against the wall, unable to hold back anymore. Memories of everything Kalen had done, his words, his touches, the intimacy they shared, flooded its mind. "What about me?" it demanded. "All those things you said to me, everything you did, what did they mean? Tell me the truth. Don't lie to me anymore." Kalen whispered that to him. The kitten was simply his kitten, a relationship between owner and pet. The kitten looked at him as if its heart had just been shattered and asked if it really was nothing more than a pet. It realized that Kalen had never actually said he wanted to be with it, much less that he loved it. The affection he showed it was no different from what he gave that bird. A way to create the illusion of care, a false sense of being special. Kalen told it that it was his favorite pet, and that it always would be. A pet forever. The kitten repeated the words, clutching its chest, wondering why it hurt so much, to the point where it felt like it couldn't breathe. Did I fall in love with him without realizing it? Kalen tried to reach out and touch it, asking if it was okay, but the kitten pushed him away. It said its head was a mess and that it needed to calm down before walking off. Left alone, the kitten tried to convince itself that it had all just been its imagination. But even if it did love him, what did it matter? That feeling was nothing but a chain binding it. Its people were still suffering while it was here getting tangled up with a twisted human. It concluded that it had to leave, return to where it belonged, fulfill its mission, and stop hesitating. Meanwhile, Kalen thought that if the kitten didn't try to escape that night, it would mean it loved him enough to accept being his pet. But knowing the pride of Etherian, he figured the kitten was probably already planning to run away. He asked his guard about the orders he had given. The guard reported that all the nobles allied but the third prince had been eliminated, their resources cut off, and a warning delivered. Kalen replied that his brother must hate him now. The god confirmed it, adding that they had already stopped 3 groups of assassins sent after him. Kalen then ordered that from now on, they should let those assassins get close to him. He was betting his life on the idea that the kitten wouldn't stand by and would come to protect him. "Don't fail me, kitty," he muttered. Meanwhile, the kitten was making its escape. It noticed that security had weakened. This was its chance. But just as it was about to leave, a guard shouted that Kalen was under attack. At first, the kitten told itself it wasn't its problem anymore. Kalen could die for all it cared. But the thought of him and the memories they shared made its resolve waver. Panic set in, and it rushed back. When it arrived, Kalen was still alive, unharmed, while the guards had subdued the assassins. It seemed the kitten hadn't shown up in time to intervene. But just as the guards were about to deal with the attackers, a loud noise echoed. It was the kitten, unable to ignore the danger and coming back to protect him. It asked if Kalen was okay. Kalen was secretly pleased. The kitten had come back for him. The guards exchanged looks, knowing the plan was to let the assassins attack so the kitten would step in. But in the chaos, one assassin slipped behind the kitten and attacked. Before the blade could strike it, Kalen stepped in and took the hit himself. The kitten froze for a moment, then snapped. Fury took over as it attacked the remaining assassins, killing them without hesitation. Meanwhile, Kalen was stunned. He didn't understand why he had acted the way he did, why he had thrown himself in front of the attack. It wasn't like him to risk his life for someone else. The kitten rushed to him, asking to see the wound. Kalen insisted he would be fine, but the kitten felt guilty, blaming itself. If it hadn't tried to run away, none of this would have happened. It apologized, calling itself useless. Kalen noticed this and realized he could use it. A little later, the kitten was tending to his wound, wondering where Kalen had found the courage to block the attack like that. It complained about the guards being useless and thought that if it left, next time Kalen might not survive. Maybe I should stay, it thought. Just then, Kalen began crying again, clearly acting. The kitten, unsure, tried to comfort him, even asking if blowing on the wound would help. Kalen said that what he really needed was for the kitten to comfort him. How, the kitten asked. Kalen gently touched its ear and asked if it would stay by his side forever. The kitten hesitated, thinking that right now, it might be the only person Kalen could rely on. Even if Kalen was involved with someone else, it couldn't let him suffer, especially not because of it. So it gave in. As long as you need me, I'll stay by your side. It told itself it was just a comforting lie. But Kalen was surprised and inwardly thrilled. To him, this meant he had finally begun to tame it. The kitten then asked who had sent the assassins. Kalen replied that it was his third brother, someone who had never liked him. As long as his brother lived, Kalen would never be safe. The only solution was to kill him and take his territory. The kitten remembered that Kalen wanted to become a ruler. It worried. Was he keeping it close just to use it? Then Kalen told it that his wounds had healed, and since it had always wanted to leave, it could go now. The kitten asked if he really wanted it to leave. Kalen replied that this was his war, and he couldn't drag it into it. If he died, he asked the kitten to at least collect his remains so his enemies wouldn't desecrate his body. Before he could finish, the kitten silenced him. "Stop it," it said. "If defeating your brother and taking his territory is the only way for you to be safe, then I'll go with you." Even as it said it, it told itself that once it was all over, it would leave for good. Kalen, still acting gentle and hesitant, told it was too dangerous and that it didn't have to do so much for him. But the kitten had already made up its mind. Inside, Kalen was satisfied. He had succeeded. Now all he had to do was nurture that attachment until, little by little, the kitten would become completely his, to dominate or hurt as he pleased. This time, the kitten gave up on escaping and chose to protect him. So Kalen decided he would reward his little pet. That night, the kitten was asleep when the door slowly opened. A pale figure stepped inside. Kalen approached, wanting to touch it, but the kitten, half awake, reacted instinctively. Still, Kalen reassured it softly. Seeing him like that only made the kitten blush. Kalen said he was scared of sleeping alone, so he came to lie down beside it. The kitten turned its back and muttered, "Just for today." Kalen smiled to himself, clearly pleased. A little later, Kalen began moving closer, brushing against it, tangling their legs together. The kitten wondered why he kept acting this way. Why he kept pulling it into something complicated when he supposedly already had someone in his heart. Frustrated, it told him to stop. But Kalen teased it, pointing out how tense it was. The kitten flushed and tried to brush it off, saying it was normal for its kind. Kalen, however, kept pushing, offering to help it relax. The kitten grew suspicious, wondering what he was planning, and told him to stop. But Kalen only continued teasing, making things even more awkward. As things escalated, even Kalen seemed affected, confused by his own reactions. For a moment, he questioned himself, whether what he felt for the kitten was something deeper than just ownership. The kitten, overwhelmed, tried to regain control, but the tension between them only kept building. Eventually, things went too far, and the moment turned intense and chaotic, leaving both of them affected in different ways. Afterward, Kalen pulled away, trying to regain composure, saying that was enough for the night, and that next time it shouldn't be so rough. The kitten, still flustered and frustrated, realized it was struggling more and more to resist him. It told itself it needed to hurry, finish what it had to do, help Kalen deal with his brother. The next morning, the kitten woke up only to immediately feel uneasy again. Kalen was half-dressed as usual, with a teasing smile. He said that when he came back from washing up the night before, the kitten was already asleep, and asked if it hadn't even thought about waiting for him. The kitten got visibly nervous and blushed, which made Kalen wonder why it was reacting that way. Are my provocations not working anymore? He thought. The kitten quickly changed the subject and asked what he planned to do about his brother. Kalen explained that his brother had built his fortune through slave trade and exploitation, so he intended to destroy him using those very same slaves. He revealed that he had already sent his men to infiltrate his brother's territory by pretending to be injured and abused slaves. Their mission was to befriend the others, talk to them about equality and freedom, and plant seeds of rebellion in hearts that had long lost hope. If everything went as planned, those seeds would soon explode into action. Just then, a god entered and handed him a letter. After reading it, Kalen said the gem mine owned by his third brother, where slaves worked, had collapsed, leaving many injured and dead, including some of the men he had sent. He told the kitten to leave him alone. The kitten silently watched him. But moments later, once alone, Kalen revealed his true reaction. He was actually pleased. The collapse had happened earlier than expected, but it still fit perfectly into his plan. Soon after, a guard reported that taking advantage of the chaos, they had secretly moved the most influential slaves from the mine into Kalen's territory. The infiltrators were still stationed in the third prince's lands, awaiting further orders. Kalen praised the work and ordered that those slaves be sent to the port so they could interact with his workers and experience kindness, something that would ignite rebellion even further. He also ordered rumors to spread that the mines were cursed by the spirits of those who died there, damaging his brother's reputation and the value of his minerals. At the same time, he planned to introduce higher quality minerals into the market to attract his brother's clients and ruin him completely. When asked if his brother had made any moves, the guard replied that he was too busy dealing with the disaster. However, he had learned about the kitten Kalen kept and was trying to lure it to his side. Kalen immediately reacted with anger. How dare he try to take him from me? He thought. In his mind, the kitten belonged to him. It had said it would stay. Right then, the kitten appeared. Kalen, acting impulsively, folded in and kissed it deeply, even biting its lips. The kitten turned bright red, infused by his intensity. Kalen, momentarily losing control, admired the marks he left before catching himself and apologizing, claiming he was just afraid of losing it. He admitted he knew his behavior wasn't normal, that he'd spent years trying to act like a normal person, and begged it not to hate him. The kitten took his hand and reassured him, telling him he was fine the way he was. From there, things escalated again. Kalen, driven by his obsession with mocking and possessing the kitten, continued pushing boundaries, wanting to leave his mock and make the kitten undeniably his. Meanwhile, the kitten resisted in words but was clearly affected, caught between confusion, attraction, and its own instincts. Eventually, their tension reached a breaking point, and they gave in to their impulses. The moment was intense, messy, and driven by conflicting emotions, control, desire, confusion, and attachment all tangled together. By the next morning, the consequences of that night were clear. Kalen woke up, realizing things hadn't gone according to his original plan. He had wanted to manipulate the situation to gain control over the kitten, but instead, things had turned around, and he had ended up losing that control. The kitten, on the other hand, accepted responsibility for what happened, saying it had lost control and couldn't stop itself. It even offered to accept punishment if needed, just to ease the tension between them. Kalen watched it and realized just how deeply it had gotten under his skin. The kitten then made it clear that it was not a pet, a wild beast like it would never belong to anyone in that way. If Kalen only intended to use it, then once everything was over, once his brother was defeated, it would leave and disappear for good. Kalen asked what it really wanted. The answer was simple, genuine love. At first, Kalen didn't respond. But eventually, he admitted the truth. Yes, in the beginning, he had intended to use it. But over time, his feelings had grown beyond his control. Saying he felt nothing now would be a lie. He told it he wanted it to stay. The kitten replied that as long as they stayed together and moved forward, it would remain by his side, help him take the throne, help build something better. And so, despite everything, the manipulation, the chaos, the obsession, they chose to stay together. In the end, the story closed on that note. Unresolved in many ways, but with the two of them bound together, moving forward, likely toward power, conflict, and whatever twisted version of happiness they could create. The prince no longer saw the kitten as just a pet, and the panther no longer saw him as just another human. They saw each other, laws, darkness, and all. And maybe, in their own broken way, that was enough. The days that followed were neither simple nor peaceful. Kalen kept his word. He stopped referring to the panther as a pet. Not because the desire had vanished, but because he had begun to understand that the kitten was more valuable when it chose to stay rather than when it was forced. And the panther, Kalen, as Kalen had started calling it, though it still bristled at the name, watched the prince with wary, conflicted eyes. Trust did not come easily. Trust was a luxury neither of them had ever been able to afford. One evening, Kalen found Kalen standing on the balcony outside his chambers, staring at the moon. The panther's ears twitched at the sound of footsteps, but it didn't turn around. "You're brooding," Kalen said, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm thinking." "Same thing." Kalen's tail flicked. "Your brother's spies have been circling the port. They know you're planning something." Kalen's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "Let them circle. Let them report. By the time they understand what I'm doing, it will be too late." He moved closer, stopping just beside the panther. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of salt and distant rain. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Kalen said, quietly, "You never told me what happened to the others." Kalen stiffened. "What others?" "The ones before me. The ones you try to tame." Kalen finally turned to face him, its golden eyes unreadable in the moonlight. "Did they all leave? Or did you destroy them?" The silence stretched like a blade. Kalen's jaw tightened. "The first one tried to kill herself. The second went mad. I sent them away before." He stopped, his voice caution. "Before what?" "Before I could watch them break completely." Kalen studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, it reached out and touched his face. Not gently, not roughly, but with a strange, searching tenderness. "You're afraid of becoming like your brother," it said. "Of becoming the monster everyone already thinks you are." Kalen's breath hitched. "Arna, I don't know." Kalen's thumb brushed his cheekbone. "But you let me bite you. You let me mark you. You stepped in front of a blade for me. Those aren't the actions of someone who only sees me as a tool. They might be the actions of someone who's losing control." Kalen almost smiled. "Good. Control is overrated." Before Kalen could respond, the Panther leaned in and kissed him, not with the desperate hunger of their previous encounters, but with something softer, more deliberate, a question rather than a demand. When they pulled apart, Kalen's eyes were bright. "What was that for?" "To remind you that you're not alone in this." Kalen stepped back, its tail swaying. "Now let's go inside. You have a rebellion to plan, and I have a brother to help you destroy." Kalen stared at it for a moment, then laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him. "When did you become the sensible one?" "About the time you stopped pretending to be sane." The plan unfolded over the following weeks. Kalen's spies reported that the third prince, Lord Theron, was growing increasingly desperate. The collapse of the mine had damaged his reputation, and the rumors of curses had driven away his wealthiest buyers. His attempts to lure the Panther to his side had failed. Every messenger he sent was intercepted, every letter returned unopened. "He's going to try something direct," Kalen said, studying the maps spread across his war table. Kalen stood beside him, its arms crossed, its tail wrapped loosely around its ankle. "An attack, an assassination, or a kidnapping. He knows I'm vulnerable where you're concerned." Kalen's ears flattened. "I'm not a weakness." "No," Kalen agreed. "You're my greatest strength. Which is why he'll try to remove you." He turned to Captain Riley. "Double the guards on the eastern approach, and send word to the port. If anyone asks about the new workers, they know nothing." Riley nodded and left. Kalen watched him go, then looked back at Kalen. "You're baiting him." "I'm giving him the opportunity to make a mistake." Kalen's smile was cold. "He's always been impatient. Impatience leads to errors. Errors lead to death." Kalen shivered, not from fear, but from the chill of Kalen's certainty. "And if he doesn't take the bait? Then we wait. Time is on our side." Kalen reached out and took the Panther's hand, his fingers warm against its claws. "He doesn't know that I have you. He doesn't understand what that means." "What does it mean?" Kalen looked at it, really looked, and for a moment, the mask slipped. What remained beneath was not the cold prince or the twisted manipulator, but something rawer, more human. "It means I have something worth fighting for. Worth protecting." He has never had that. Kalen's chest tightened. It didn't know how to respond to honesty, not from Kalen, not from anyone. So it did the only thing that felt right. It squeezed his hand back. "Then let's make sure he never gets the chance to take it away." The attack came 3 nights later. Not at the castle, but at the port. A coordinated strike meant to cripple Kalen's supply lines and send a message. Lord Theron's men set fire to the warehouses where the freed slaves had been housed. The flames rose high and hungry, lighting up the night sky like a second dawn. Kalen received word while he was in the war room, studying troop movements. His face went pale, then hard. "Kalen," he said, his voice steady despite the fury in his eyes. "We need to go." The Panther was already moving, its form shifting mid-stride, black fur rippling in the torchlight. Kalen mounted it. No saddle, no hesitation, and together they raced toward the port. The scene was chaos. Burning buildings, screaming workers, the clash of steel as Kalen's guards fought Theron's mercenaries. Kalen tore into the attackers with brutal efficiency, its claws and fangs leaving nothing but silence in their wake. And in the center of it all, standing amid the flames like a demon conjured from nightmare, was Lord Theron. He smiled when he saw them. Little brother, he called, his voice carrying over the din. I see you've brought your pet. Kalen slid from Kalen's back, drawing his sword. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. He's not my pet. He's my partner. He stepped forward. And you're going to regret touching what's mine.